It is common knowledge to many how much the manga Berserk draws on the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche for its narrative, a point I've made in the past if you haven't seen those videos. What isn't noted much is how the works of Shakespeare and Nietzsche's interpretation of them factor into Berserk as well in a Venn diagram of philosophy. Amongst Nietzsche's writings, he speaks of his admiration towards the portrayal of Brutus within Julius Caesar, and how his actions in betraying Caesar for the good of the Republic and its people was a noble choice due to him placing his autonomy, or the independence of the soul, as Nietzsche may say, above politics or friendship, and could be seen in Nietzschean terms to go beyond good and evil. It is an interesting example when looking both at cases from the Berserk manga and looking critically at Nietzsche's position. Fans of Berserk will clearly see the two parts of the manga most comparable to this ideal, being Guts leaving the band of the Hawk to find purpose beyond just being Griffith's tool, and Griffith's sacrifice of the band to achieve his dream. It is when judging the character motivations that we see how one is an embodiment of Nietzsche's ideals, whereas the other is a corruption of it. Guts leaves the band to find his own purpose when acknowledging he will never be truly free if staying by Griffith's side. In this, he perfectly embodies Nietzsche's thoughts on needing to place one's spirit of individualism above all else, as well as the broad concept of the Übermensch. Meanwhile, Griffith's choice is one made selfishly for his own elevation, despite his conscious belief in it being to honour those who had fallen, trying to achieve his goal. After all, one cannot say that violating Casca and making Guts watch at all served his wider goal, and is what Nietzsche would see as antithetical to autonomy of the soul, in him doing so for them gaining such autonomy, and him lacking such after letting his obsession with Guts take hold of him. This links well with the Brutus analysis, as it is founded upon Nietzsche overlooking Mark Antony's speech. As it continues, his affirmation of Brutus's honour becomes increasingly sarcastic, with him finding a subtle manner in which to refute Brutus's position, and display him as misguided at best and disingenuous at worst. How this ties into Femto's actions is obvious, but the ties are threefold. It also displays an openness of Miura being able to criticize and improve upon Nietzsche's stance, as is important for both art and philosophy, in order for them to continue to thrive. And the third tie is in the fate this provides for the two characters. Brutus's speech and justification is centered on the pretense of him being honorable, with his action of betraying Caesar with murder within a senate meant to be for civilized debate, when the proper course, if his honor was genuine, would be to rally plebeians and patricians to his side publicly, and ask Caesar to step down as proof of whether he was indeed an ambitious tyrant or doing what he truly believed best for the Republic. Instead, his actions damned him by showing he nor the conspirators could compete with Caesar on an even playing field, with such backstabbing being something Caesar had enough class not to resort to. The irony of this being that Brutus's action resulted in numerous versions of the tyrannical Caesar he had built up in his head, coming to vie for power rather than the freedom of his countrymen. His justification centers equally as much on the affirmation that Caesar was a tyrant, which Mark Antony, even at his most critical of him, cannot agree with. Similarly, Femto's decision damns him to the fate of being the God Hand, which, with what the manga has displayed to us of those that activate Baelitz, will result in a fate far worse after death than had he remained human, especially relevant when we know God Hand members have and can continue to be replaced. Alongside this comparison, how Guts comes to act serves to exemplify him as upholding the ideals of the Übermensch and his autonomy of the soul, whereas Griffith gave into what can be considered causality that came about through his inability to act independently of Guts and resign himself to being a slave of destiny. Guts is hinted at several times to be one who may defy causality, or at least the broader notions of it, as well as wield an object capable of harming his sworn enemy. Though this is in part a means of not making Griffith an unstoppable force, it also serves as the perfect visualization of one gaining autonomy of the soul, in guts defying destiny and overcoming hatred for both Casca's sake and his own peace. Though how he will regain those or avoid becoming enslaved to causality with recent events in the manga is something we must wait and see. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. If there's enough support for this, I will do a follow-up video sooner or later upon similar ties between Nietzsche, Shakespeare and Berserk, focused this time on Hamlet.